January 22nd, the day I was born. This year, January 22nd also marks the day the Nvidia GTX 960 was released. So is the 960 really a sweet spot for 1080p gaming on a budget? Does it join the ranks of a R9 280 and R9 285 from the red team? This is my attempt to find out. Hey guys, I have an Nvidia GTX 560 Ti Superclocked Edition graphics card that has been serving me moderately for the past 2 years, but I feel it's time to upgrade. I've just been getting to the point where I need to keep compromising my visual quality in order for games to run at a smooth frame rate, and I'd really like to enjoy 1080p gaming to its fullest native, not modded, graphical potential for at least this year of 2015 games, if that's even possible. The GTX 960 piqued my interest, and I checked the reviews for the 960 and I noticed the performance is a step up from the GTX 760, its predecessor. I was able to get my hands on a GTX 760 thanks to a buddy of mine, and in this video I'll be making a comparison between the old GTX 560 Ti and GTX 760 to help me predict what kind of performance increase I can expect with a GTX 960. Before I get into the benchmarks, besides the graphic cards I mentioned, my old rig consists of a Core i5 3570K hidden behind my Cooler Master Hyper 212 Plus, 16GB of Corsair Vengeance DDR3 memory, a BioStar TZ77XC3 motherboard, and an unnecessary 1000 watt Antec power supply. First up, of course I benchmarked Battlefield 4. I focused on the multiplayer maps for this benchmark, and I just want to clarify, depending on the video settings, map, and game mode you're playing on, the average frame per second can be higher than what I'm showing, but what I highlighted can be used as a gauge for most maps. On ultra settings, I was getting about 55 frames per second with the GTX 760 compared to a measly 31 FPS with the GTX 560 Ti. And you might be thinking, hey, 31 frames per second, it's still 1 frame better than a lot of console games, but the reality is the frame dip to 12 FPS is not the stable experience one desires. On high settings, I get around 70 FPS with the 760 and about 44 FPS with the 560 Ti. Moving along to a newer first-person shooter, here are some benchmarks for Far Cry 4. Running around Kyrat, the game crushes my old 560 Ti on ultra settings with only 17 frames per second. Very high settings wasn't great either at 25, but at least high settings I get around 46 FPS. At medium settings, the 560 Ti shines and can play Far Cry 4 at 57 frames per second at 1080p. Ultra settings for the 760, I was able to get around 40 FPS, very high at 45, high at 50, and medium at 68 FPS. This game looks great on ultra settings, and with the 760 I could appreciate the game's visuals without it moving like a slideshow. Switching to an action RPG that was released almost 4 years ago, here's The Witcher 2 benchmarks. This game is taxing. As old as it is, even the 760 struggles with this one on ultra specs. The 560 Ti only gets 15 FPS, and the 760 gets about 27 FPS. Switching things over to high specs, my old 560 Ti gets 36 FPS and the 760 gets about 56 FPS. Next up is Grid 2, and I'd like to thank the Flaming Monocle for gifting me this game on Steam. He is the nicest evil overlord here on YouTube. His channel link is in the description. This is a very pretty racing game, and it runs really well on the 560 Ti. On ultra settings I get 42 FPS, and on high settings I get 98 FPS. The 760 still crushes these numbers though. On ultra settings I get 77, and on high settings I get 139 frames per second. Lastly, it's interesting to note that games that lock the FPS count can actually even out the performance levels between these two cards. For instance, Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes has an FPS cap at 60 FPS, unless you manually edit one of the game's files to unlock it. So on high settings, the GTX 760 and 560 Ti have the same 60 FPS performance. But on very high settings, the 560 Ti only reaches 25 FPS, while the 760 gets 54 on average. So the GTX 760 is definitely a nice boost over my old GTX 560 Ti, and that has me excited already for what the 960 has in store concerning pure performance gain. In regards to my desire to max out 2015 games, I've noticed that I'm still making compromises in games like Far Cry 4 and Witcher 2 in order to get frames over 60 FPS with the 760. This makes the modest performance increase the 960 has over the GTX 760 in most benchmarks I've seen online a little disappointing. Also, looking at the specs of the GTX 960, I'm dismayed that Nvidia chose to limit this card's performance by offering a smaller memory bus compared to the 760. VRAM is the same, and considering that a 4GB version of the 760 is out, I'm sure at some point there will be a 4GB version of the 960 as well. So on the one hand, depending on how well a game is optimized, I might be able to play recently released titles like Metal Gear Solid 5 at max 1080p settings with a GTX 960 equivalent card. But on the other hand, I might have to compromise my quality in games like Witcher 2. And dang it, what if I want to enjoy all the fine details of Witcher 2 uncompromised? Whoa, wrong clip. Yeah, that's what I was talking about, you know, the scenic view. Anyways, if graphics cards at this level struggle with Witcher 2, I wonder how they're gonna handle Witcher 3. Now, I'm sure there will be a GTX 960 Ti released at some point. All the rage is going on about Nvidia Grid and Shield right now, but I'm sure we'll hear some new graphic card news eventually. Also, a R9 280X has dropped in price, just being $20 to $45 more expensive than a 960, and that card is superior to the 960 from Nvidia and its fellow AMD cards, the R9 285 and 280. So I must remind you guys watching this video, there are some really nice options out there for 1080p gaming. That said, having previously dealt with driver issues with ATI cards and the fact that I know Shadowplay runs so efficiently, I love using it to record the GTX 760 footage I use in this video, and I can only speculate what AMD's GVR performance is like, I'm sticking to an Nvidia card. I've ordered my GTX 960 because an opportunity came up where I can get the graphics card shipped down to me for free, and considering I live in Belize, a country where I can't get these types of hardware easily, I couldn't waste this chance. More benchmarks and my conclusion near the end of the month when I'll have my GTX 960 on hand. So if you liked this video, click that thumbs up button and subscribe to make sure you check out the second part of my quest to see if the GTX 960 really is a 1080p gaming sweet spot. That's it for now. I'm out.